This presentation on governance, risk management, and compliance comes to us from Craig D'Souza. Craig D'Souza is a managing director of iCertify and an exemplar global certified principal auditor across the quality, environmental, and OH&S disciplines. He has vast knowledge and experience in the development, maintenance, management, and integration of ISO management systems, including ISO 14001, ISO 9001, and ISO 45001. He has audited these systems as well as assisted companies in the end-to-end development and compliance of these systems against the relevant ISO standards. Craig's knowledge also covers areas relating to risk management, ISO 31000, corporate governance, and social responsibility. He has worked across multiple industries, including software, transport and logistics, manufacturing, engineering services, government, federal and state, and clean technology. And with that, take it away, Craig.
Thanks, Mike. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today. As you can see from the title slide, I'm going to be talking about governance, risk management, and compliance, GRC. It's a very broad topic, and I'm going to focus it mainly on the IT and software development industry. It's a growing industry. It's a really exciting industry, but also one which presents a unique set of challenges and opportunities and risks. Finally, at the end of the presentation, I'm also going to get into a bit of a case study for a company called Atlassian. Hopefully you've heard of that company. It's all about the approaches used to manage GRC and how they've initiated various change initiatives into their organization. Just by way of background on who we are, eRisk 360, as Mike mentioned, owner and director of a management consulting company. I'm a registered auditor with Exemplar Global. In recent times, I've worked across the software industries in various customer-facing roles spanning sales, business development, marketing, and new business development. So I've got a strong interest in governance, risk, and compliance, and how that mindset can be used to scale organizations in the software industry. So some of the learning outcomes of this presentation. As you can see, provide an overview of governance, risk, and compliance, give you some general background on why GRC is important, and then I'll get into a case study on Atlassian. The overall objective here is to impart some knowledge on some of the risks that the IT and software development industry face, and provide some frameworks and tools on how these risks can be managed. So, moving right along, what are some of the challenges companies face when they scale? Access to capital and finance, access to expertise, attracting and retaining talent, culture, getting the vision, the mission, and the values right, and also not having a standardized system and process. For example, your HR systems and processes. So some of these typical challenges are described in this slide here. Obviously, there are more challenges depending on the type of industry, the organization, the founders. But typically, most small to medium enterprises face these kinds of challenges. And further on to that, we've found that CIOs and CEOs face various challenges around cybersecurity. So there was a recent study done where businesses in Australia can face fines of up to $1.8 million that's associated with data and privacy breaches. And that's in relation to the new data breach scheme that's been introduced. We've also got globally $12.5 billion lost through email compromise, malware attacks, and 90% of malware attacks delivered through email. So I guess what I'm really trying to say here is that there are a number of challenges that companies face not just ones I've described here, but also some of these cybersecurity threats, various risks that poses to companies that work in the IT and software industry. Well, what does all this mean? It means that they need to have very robust and dynamic GRC practices and controls, which will assist them in managing these complex and ever-changing risks. And I also mentioned, forgot to mention here, one of the obvious ones, there is a heavy compliance burden and cost on companies that are starting out, whether it be with tax or with various regulations in terms of health and safety. All these are all legitimate challenges that organisations face when they start out. So, what is governance, risk management, and compliance? Governance. The processes and goals of the organisation have to be aligned. How an organisation is run in an efficient and responsible manner, and how they report their policies to all stakeholders. That's effectively what governance is about. And there's various other definitions, but I'm using some commonly accepted terms and definitions here. Risk management. Organisations need to be able to identify risks and the management measures and report on these risks to their stakeholders, to the board, to senior management. They need to be able to undertake risk assessment. They need to evaluate these risks. And as I mentioned, they need to report to the appropriate stakeholders. Compliance. What's compliance? Organisations need to meet applicable rules and regulations. As I mentioned, health and safety, data, privacy, anything that is relevant to the local laws, national laws. The organisation has to run its policies with existing rules and regulations. Can be difficult, can be complex. These rules are constantly changing, and they can move fairly fast. So why is GRC important? So there are four major reasons. It enables a company to steer their performance in the right direction, improve the quality of products and services, prevent damage, and be in control. So just to recap, what we're saying here is organisations need to have a robust and dynamic GRC practices. It will assist them in managing these complex and ever-changing risks. In steering performance, the first dot point, we're looking towards things such as the organisational culture, the leadership behaviours. In terms of the second dot point, improving quality and the products and services. Could be looking at things like compliance against various certified ISO management systems like 9001, looking at various tools and methodologies like Agile, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in this presentation. Preventing damage and disasters. We talk about this now in terms of having a disaster recovery plan. That could be for IT, it could be if your data warehouses or your servers get destroyed or attacked by malicious software. We talk about this in terms of a disaster recovery plan and being in control. So this is all about looking for what are some of the critical control policies, what are the risk control frameworks, having management oversight, access to various security and control policies. And there's a whole heap of these control policies which I'll go through in more detail in the case study. So as I mentioned, I'm relating this very much to the IT and software industry. We live in the age where the IT and software is used to create a number of important business critical functions within an organization, for example, your accounting, your payroll, through to various other essential services. A lot of electricity companies are using software now to monitor, track usage, and even provide some of the infrastructure. So managing these GRC threats is of increased importance. So a bit of theoretical background here. When looking at risk, there's various types of risks here. There's unit level risks, which is limited to a single component. Then you've got system-wide level risks, which are more expansive, a little bit more complex, and can range throughout the entire system. So, for example, with unit level risks, these can be fixed by individual software developers. It could be a functional requirement fix, and you can pinpoint what component requires fixing, as opposed to a system level risks. It could be caused at a system architecture level. It could result from the entire system components interacting with each other and various sort of external components interacting with the software. Due to the size and complexity of today's systems, there is a need for software analysis tools to be used to identify such of these system-wide risks. And there's various tools that can be used to mitigate these risks. But this is a general kind of overview of how risks are categorized. Moving along. Different types of risk can be security. This is when problems encompass flaws that expose things such as the private data, any access privileges, and this can be a huge business impact, and there's also fines associated with this that I described previously. You've got your reliability of your systems. This includes problems such as system downtime, data corruption, and the ability of operations and IT system administrators to bring the system back from an outage. Then there's false in performance efficiency, and this can be a heavy drain on computing resources, causing slow response times and a slow application scalability. And this can impact on your workforce productivity and your end user satisfaction. Then you've got maintainability. This could be in the way the software has been constructed, the result of slow fixes to problems, and inability to respond to changing market conditions, and the high IT costs associated with fixes. The objective is always to eliminate the risk. So some of the examples of various standards and frameworks that can be used to manage risks. There are a lot more than these. I'm not going to go into any of the detail. I just wanted to mention some of these and also some which will be discussed during the case study. Various federal and state legislation around GDPR. We've got the Privacy and Data Protection Act of Victoria, 2014. Got various other IT frameworks like ITIL, NIST, PCI DSS, and some of the ISO standards as well on information security, risk management, and also other various personal qualifications and certifications. Okay, now we're going to talk about a case study and how this particular company, Atlassian, used a number of GRC approaches to assist in their growth journey. Firstly, I'll talk a little bit about the company, the background, some industry background, some of the challenges that Atlassian faced, their general approach to managing their GRC, and some key findings and recommendations. So as I mentioned, in terms of the industry background, software and IT landscape is changing very fast. There's new products that are continually being developed. Companies are moving into the cloud. We see increased automation of processes, various new business models. Software as a service is a new term where a company can innovate with their business model, where they basically offer a subscription-based service, and these services can be highly scalable. I've picked Atlassian here because it's an Australian success story. It was founded in 2002. It's now listed on the New York Stock Exchange. That was back in 2015. And the company develops various enterprise software, best known for their issue tracking software called Jira, Jira Cloud, Confluence, Bitbucket, Bamboo, various programs that can be used by software developers, software companies and IT teams to track issues. The company has experienced year-on-year revenue growth since launching in 2011, and it's a $1 billion company in revenue last year. The current market cap is around $30 billion. So this company started off very small, and as you'll see, and hopefully you'll be able to identify some of the key things, key attributes that Atlassian did to enable it to grow by having this governance, risk management, and compliance mindset. So the software and IT challenges, there are a number of software development methodologies that were around at the time. There was Agile, there was Waterfall, Kanban, Scrum. Hopefully some of you have heard of these terms. But Agile software development was the buzzword around 20 years ago, and it still is. And there was a philosophy around it, and it was the Agile Manifesto of 2001. So to give you a brief background on what it is, because this methodology is very important to not just software companies, but obviously the case study Atlassian that I'm talking to as well. So Agile is about individuals and interactions over processes and risks. It's about having working software over comprehensive documentation. It's about customer collaboration over contract negotiation. It's about responding to change over following a plan. Some of the benefits are reducing the time to market, improving quality of your products, productivity, increasing satisfaction, and reducing costs. And this was an internal survey that was done by Atlassian, and they found a number of benefits here, focusing on the stakeholders, autonomous team execution, highly adaptable, and continuous improvement. So what we found was, by investigating this case study, is the traditional approach that Atlassian were using, which was based on Agile, was an absolute nightmare. They found it difficult. It was highly unstructured. There was limited documentation. The company was scaling really fast, and it was a very fast-moving product. So how did they cope with this kind of change? What was required for them to do in order to keep up with this pace of change? Because what this methodology really did was flip the entire sort of management thinking around documentation and risks on its head, really. So what do? And there were 5 basic principles that Atlassian did. And I'm going to go through these one by one. The first one was about innovating. And they did what they did best, and that was continue to come up with remarkable software that people could use. So they innovated in their processes, they leveraged their existing processes, they put in place various optimizations on how they could streamline some of their processes, and they had very robust risk management methodologies. The second really important method that was used was about creating the right company culture. And this was created through the Atlassian trust management system. And at the heart of the trust management system, it was about having core values. And some of the core values were being open, building products based on passion and people's passion, and also building products fast and taking it quickly to market. Some of their other core values involved putting the customers first, a highly team and collaborative environment, and providing a lot of ownership to employees to have courage and resourcefulness to spark change, building in that continuous improvement philosophy. And building on from the culture, what was also very evident was the mission that the company had, and it was instilled into all the employees. And that mission was about building remarkable products, and they wanted their customers to actually remark about their products. So that was very ingrained in the culture, and that mission statement is quite evident. So as I mentioned, they had what we called a trust management system, and it was built on the key principles of some of these standards and frameworks that they eventually got certified to. And one of those was ISO 27001, which is the information security standard. So what we found is there was a close alignment with the Atlassian trust management system and various principles of an ISO management system. For example, things like having a greater emphasis on risk-based thinking, a greater emphasis on leadership, greater emphasis on customer satisfaction, meeting customers' needs, meeting your end user expectations, as well as meeting compliance regulations. And there was also a strong focus on continuous improvement within the organization. So if you want to find out more about the Atlassian Trust Management System, you can jump onto their website, and there is a page on how they implemented this trust management system, and happy to share more information on that as well. So moving on, the third major way in their approach to management of governance, compliance and risk was that the organization instituted a risk and compliance team. And this team was very diverse in terms of their skill mix. It consisted of business representatives, IT, finance, marketing, software development, support, sales. And the team members were very much aligned to the business strategy of the organization. And when I say business strategy, I mean the mission that was stated above around building remarkable products. And historically, what you find is compliance professionals are considered to be showstoppers to innovation and growth. But Atlassian didn't look at it that way. They embedded risk and compliance professionals into the culture of the organization, so they weren't considered potential barriers to growth, scalability, developing new products. They were very much part of the team, and this was, again, very much of a cultural mission. The other very important thing that Atlassian did is they took GRC very seriously. Not only did they develop what I mentioned above about having the Atlassian trust management system, they also had what we call an Atlassian control framework. They were heavily audited. They chose to get certified to a number of different standards. There's ISO 27001, information security. There's PCI DSS, payment card industry data security standard. Various GDPR regulations, privacy shield frameworks, and there were various other certifications that Atlassian chose to adhere to. But what they did is they embedded some of the key principles and controls from the above standards into their daily operations. And they reused and reduced the audit burden, reducing business involvement, lowering the audit cost, and increasing alignment of audits. So their approach enabled them to expand and be scalable. So if they were to add any new standards or any new regulations, it would be very much of a marginal effort to get certified. So that was a smart way of how they built scale. They got certified to a number of different standards, but they basically found the common elements of these standards and built this into their daily operations, so that once they wanted to add more and more standards into their frameworks, it could be very easily done. And again, this next point here that I raise, the fifth point now we're up to, it's they built a culture which integrated compliance with quality. So a leadership in developing a culture of quality. There was a move from quality assurance to quality assistance. There was a lot more test automation. They issued surveys to gather various insights from staff on areas that could be improved. And there was a strong sense of empathy in aligning and interconnecting various team members. It was a very flattened organizational structure, and these cross-functional teams were able to support and help each other out. So there was a lot of cultivation, development of internal champions and ambassadors to improve. A new role was created for a quality advocate, and they were tasked with promoting the importance of quality within the company and sharing various best practice measures that were driving new quality initiatives. So there's a lot of mention there. In summary, I guess the 5 approaches were about innovation. The first one was about innovation in their products and their processes. The second one was built around their culture. It was built on trust, a strong corporate values and a mission focused on building truly remarkable products. And I referred to that culture that was based on what they referred to as the Atlassian trust management system. The third point was around instituting a compliance of risk, where they embedded organizational and structures and aligned that with the business. And they took GRC very seriously, implementing these various frameworks. And finally, how they integrated compliance with quality. So that comes to the conclusion of our presentation. Hopefully you've learnt some things about governance, risk and compliance, some of the tools and technologies that can be used within your organisation. And that's it for me. Thanks for your time.
Well, thank you, Craig Souza.